For most people, Rome's rise feels like something that was always meant to happen. The disciplined legions, the unbreakable formations, the roads stretching over mountains and deserts, it all feels inevitable. Like an empire simply fulfilling its destiny. But history never follows anyone's script. Empires don't ascend because fate taps them on the shoulder. They rise because others stumble. And long before Rome ruled the Mediterranean, it lived in the shadow of a very different kind of powerhouse. A city that didn't conquer to grow, it traded. A city that didn't depend on citizen armies, depended on capital. A city that challenged Rome not with ideology or swords, but with money. For a time, it looked like it might actually win. Welcome to the financial historian where power, wealth, and the past all collide, and nothing is ever as straightforward as it seems. To understand how Carthage nearly halted Rome's rise, you have to throw away the usual version of ancient history. Rome is usually painted as the symbol of order and progress, while Carthage is treated like a minor character. A rich merchant state that produced one great general and disappeared. But that version misses everything that matters. Carthage wasn't a side note. It was the first great economic rival Rome ever faced. And its strength didn't come from warriors or myths. It came from something shockingly familiar to us today: trade networks, financial creativity, supply chains that spanned continents, and a ruling class that behaved more like the board of a multinational corporation than ancient statesmen. Centuries before Venice, Amsterdam, or Wall Street, Carthage built a commercial empire so powerful it turned the Mediterranean into one giant marketplace. Founded by Phoenician traders from Tyre around 814 BCE, it started as a modest outpost and became a giant by mastering three pillars: the sea, commerce, and logistics. While Rome expanded over land, Carthage expanded by taking command of key maritime checkpoints: Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, the North African coast, and eventually the silver-rich regions of Spain. Carthage didn't need endless farms or citizen manpower. It had ports, dry docks, merchants, and money. Its double harbor and outer port for trade and an inner circular naval harbor was a marvel of engineering. In the middle stood an island-like admiralty ringed with ship sheds, allowing fleets to be launched or repaired at unmatched speed. This wasn't just a harbor, it was a machine that printed wealth. Rome, meanwhile, began as a land-bound agrarian society. Its fortune came from fields and its military strength from citizens who worked them. Its economy was slower, simpler, and more local. Rome had no early interest in naval power or far-flung commerce. As long as Rome stayed on land and Carthage stayed on water, the two worlds barely touched. But the Mediterranean isn't built for peaceful coexistence. It's built for competition. Eventually, the rivalry erupted into what we now call the Punic Wars. Long, bitter conflicts fought over money, trade routes, and maritime dominance. Beneath the surface, these wars weren't about culture. They were about economics. One system was fueled by manpower on land, the other by capital on the sea. Once both powers reached for the same prize, conflict wasn't personal, it was mathematical. That prize was Sicily. Sicily wasn't just an island. It was the gateway to Mediterranean trade, a crossroads of grain flows and the hinge connecting the east and west. Whoever controlled Sicily controlled the lifelines of ancient commerce. Rome wanted security. Carthage wanted revenue. Two rising powers targeting the same strategic point meant war was inevitable. The First Punic War began not from hatred but from identical ambitions. Carthage entered confident, with naval skill and professional mercenaries. Rome stepped in with almost no navy at all. And this is where the financial divergence begins. Rome, aware of its weakness, reverse-engineered a Carthaginian warship, mass-produced hundreds, and funded this huge naval leap with loans and public contributions on a scale Rome had never seen. Carthage leaned on its existing strengths. Rome created new ones. This war wasn't just over territory. It was a contest between a commercial economy and a militarized financial system that was quickly learning how to use credit. To understand Carthage, you have to understand its unusual structure. Rome fought with citizens. Carthage fought with money. Its armies were mostly mercenary, Numidian cavalry, Iberian fighters, Balearic slingers, Greek specialists. Carthage bought skill, flexibility, and experience. Warfare was an investment profitable as long as the treasury stayed full. This allowed Carthage to fight far from home without draining its own population or disrupting its economic engine. Trade continued even during war. Wealth kept flowing. Naval dominance ensured steady revenue from shipping and tribute. But every system has a weak point. Carthage's flaw was structural. It relied on capital, not cohesion. When the money stopped, so did the army. Rome's troops were citizen soldiers. Carthage's were contractors. Hardship made Rome stronger. Hardship broke Carthage. After the First Punic War, Carthage went financially bankrupt, trying to pay mercenary salaries. The mercenary war that followed was horrifying, not because Carthage's enemies were powerful, but because Carthage's economic model collapsed. A war started by credit ended in rebellion over unpaid wages. Yet Carthage responded in an astonishing way. It reinvented its economy instead of surrendering. Hamilcar Barcafather of Hannibal redirected Carthage towards Spain, where rich silver mines offered a fresh financial foundation. There, he created something new, a semi-private empire run by the Barcid family. They acted like a sovereign corporation, using Spanish wealth to rebuild Carthage's military power independently of Carthage's cautious politics. Corporate-style financing centuries ahead of its time. And now enters a name almost everyone knows, usually, without understanding why he mattered financially. Hannibal. People remember him as a military genius. But in this economic story, he's something even more important. The embodiment of Carthage's financial strategy. A commander leading a multinational force funded by Spanish silver, supplied through sprawling trade networks. Designed to break Rome's economic foundations, not just its armies. His legendary campaign wasn't just about elephants crossing the Alps. It was about strangling Rome's alliances, draining its tax system, and threatening the financial core of the Republic. Hannibal wasn't just a general. He was Carthage's economic model personified. That's when Rome finally understood the truth. Carthage wasn't merely a military rival, it was a commercial superpower. Rome wasn't just fighting soldiers. It was fighting a financial engine that could generate resources faster than Rome could mobilize troops. Hannibal's campaign was economic warfare, aimed to shatter Rome's fiscal stability. But Rome adapted yet again. It increased borrowing. It raised taxes. It sold state assets. It enacted emergency measures that laid the groundwork for the financial state Rome would eventually become. Carthage forced Rome to evolve, not just militarily, but economically and institutionally. As the Second Punic War unfolded, the Mediterranean became the testing ground for two different economic worlds. Carthage depended on liquidity, its ability to pay higher and maneuver. Rome depended on solvency, its ability to endure, borrow, and mobilize. Liquidity wins early. Solvency wins forever. Hannibal knew this. He didn't come to Italy expecting to wipe Rome off the map. He came to break Rome's alliances and choke its tax base. If Rome's revenue collapsed, its credit would collapse too, and then Rome would fall. But Carthage misjudged one crucial principle. Rome could absorb losses that would annihilate other states. When Hannibal massacred tens of thousands at Cannae, Rome didn't cave. It raised new armies. When cities defected, Rome tightened its grip on those that remained. When income dropped, Roman elites dipped into their own fortunes to fund the state. That kind of financial patriotism gave Rome resilience Carthage couldn't match, not because Carthaginians lacked loyalty, but because their system was built for profit, not for total war. Carthage had merchants. Rome had mobilization. Meanwhile, Carthage's ruling oligarchs held back support for Hannibal. They measured war like a risky business investment, cautiously and always concerned about commercial losses. Hannibal may have been brilliant, but he was fighting with a structural handicap, a state united by citizenship versus an empire divided by profit centers. Rome could endure decades of sacrifice. Carthage tried to minimize them. In a war of attrition, that's fatal. Rome countered by attacking Carthage's finances directly. It shifted the war to Spain and North Africa to choke off the silver mines that funded Hannibal. Scipio Africanus understood Carthage didn't need to be destroyed, only defunded. When he captured New Carthage in Spain, he seized treasure, supply depots, hostages, and communication lines. It was an economic decapitation. Carthage's financial arteries were cut. By the time Scipio invaded Africa, Carthage was running a deficit it couldn't hide. It scrambled to hire mercenaries, begged for funds, and tried to revive alliances that had grown tired of its indecision. At Zama, Carthage walked onto the battlefield already financially defeated. Rome's victory was simply the final step in a clash of incompatible economic systems. Rome imposed crushing indemnities that turned Carthage from a commercial giant into a limited city-state. And even then, Carthage rebuilt itself again through agriculture, manufacturing, and revitalized trade. By the mid-2nd century BCE, it was thriving once more. Thriving so much that Roman senators became alarmed again. This time their fear wasn't military, it was economic. Cato the Elder supposedly ended every speech with, "Carthage must be destroyed not because Carthage could invade Rome, but because it could overshadow Rome economically." The final destruction of Carthage in 146 BCE wasn't just military annihilation. It was economic elimination. The removal of a competitor that refused to stay broken. And here's where the ancient world starts sounding a lot like ours. The Rome-Carthage struggle wasn't about good versus evil, or civilization versus barbarism. It was about conflicting economic architectures. A trade empire versus a territorial empire. One built on outsourced military power, the other built around citizen mobilization. One leaning on capital, the other on credit. Swap triremes for cargo ships, silver mines for rare earth deposits, mercenaries for private contractors. Suddenly the parallels are uncomfortable. Today, some states expand through global trade networks, supply chains, infrastructure loans, and commercial leverage. Others expand through alliances, bases, and long-term credit capacity. Some favor flexible capital. Others favor mobilized unity. Some build commercial empires. Others build territorial ones. The dynamics aren't new, they're ancient. Carthage resembles modern economic powers that rely on logistics supremacy and commercial influence. Rome resembles states that fuse military identity with political cohesion and can absorb staggering losses through taxation and credit. And just like then, the real question isn't which system is morally superior, it's which system can survive stress. Economic foundations decide military outcomes, not the other way around. Carthage's downfall wasn't that it used economics. It was that it never fused its economic power with political solidarity. It thrived in prosperity, fractured in crisis. Rome did the opposite. It transformed crisis into unity. Its citizens didn't just fund the state, they believed they were the state. And history shows that when financial systems collide, the side with the stronger social contract, not the bigger treasury, usually wins. In the end, Carthage challenged Rome with economic strength. Rome answered by reinventing its financial structure. And that transformation reshaped the Mediterranean and the blueprint of empire itself. Carthage taught Rome about naval power, credit, foreign campaigning, and economic flexibility. Rome learned from the rival it destroyed. The victor became the apprentice. The defeated became the model. That's the uncomfortable lesson. Economic systems don't just clash, they hybridize, they mutate. One replaces the other. Carthage lost, but Rome inherited its world. History doesn't repeat, but if you ignore it, it'll crush you anyway. If this gave you a fresh way to see the past, hit subscribe. There's more where that came from.